our 579. Senator Stanislawski asks unanimous consent to work from a committee sub. Without objection, that will be the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this looks at increasing the number of hours for the schools that are currently doing 4-day school weeks. The state of Texas, when they work in terms of hours, is 1,200 hours per year. Oklahoma is 1,080. This just increases halfway between the two to 1,140 to provide more quality time in front of an actual teacher. There are currently, I don't know if anyone's aware of this, but there are 4 schools in this state that you only go to school 135 days a year. 135, even though 180 is required, or 175 of face-to-face with instructional activities. That's 40 days less that these kids are missing out on. And so what this does, the operative language is on page 2, increases hours from 1080 to 1140, and puts a minimum of 155 days of instruction per school year. So for those schools that want to stay on a 4-day week, they certainly can. That's what it does. Move to pass. Yield for questions.
Do pass by Senator Stanislawski, second by Senator Daniels. And Senator Scott for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, how many hours do they put in those 135 days? How many minutes?
Thank you for the question. That would equate to 8-hour days.
Okay, thank you for
follow-up.
So on the 150 day, how many minutes are they going to be going? Is this going to, are you based this on an 8-hour day?
No. So based on 155 days, 1,140 hours will be just approximately right around 7-hour days. So cutting back a little bit. Most schools that are on a 4-day week are right around the 7-hour time frame, not 8, which I think is very challenging for especially first, second, third graders, younger kids.
You have a follow-up, Senator Scott.
I didn't hear you right. Did you say that they're going on 4 days? They're going less hours a day? Is that what you just said? 7 hours on a 4-day?
I didn't say less. You asked what? Go ahead and ask your question again.
How many hours a day do the 4-day schools go currently?
Oh, it varies. It varies. I referenced 4 of them that go 8-hour days, or 8 hours per day. That's 135 school days. There's 4 of them. The other 4-day school weeks, the hours vary, the number of hours. It's based on the school.
You have a follow-up.
So if we go to 150, did you say 150 days?
No. So the answer to that is 155 would be the new minimum.
Do you have a follow-up, Senator Scott?
How many hours a day on the 155 days?
7.35 hours per day.
Follow-up.
Would you know, I've got some current 4-day schools that are going more minutes per year than the 5-day schools are going.
I did not know that. There's only one that I'm aware of that actually does more than 180 days. I mean, it's based on the calculation, how many days versus hours. But if they're doing more hours, well, that would put them over. There's only 2 districts that actually go over 180 days. I don't think either one's on an hours necessarily.
Senator Hall, question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, you mentioned in your opening 1,200 hours for Texas, if I heard you correctly. I've seen this number before, and I was just curious. In my reading, the Texas hours includes lunch, and I was just questioning whether or not the required amount of hours that you're suggesting today for Oklahoma would include the lunch hour as well.
I believe our current time frame for a 6-hour day, that's what most schools are on, 6-hour days, 108 days a year.
Does not include
includes
lunch.
that time for lunch.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
You want to follow up?
Are you aware at this time with the 1,200 hour number that you're using for Texas? Can you confirm if it is? Or would you be willing to confirm that it includes lunch hours? Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to get an apples and apples comparison today.
Well, if we're talking lunch, Senator, we ought to be talking apples. I'm telling you. Senator Stanislawski.
Thank you. And as we're at the dinner hour, I'll continue.
Yes.
I will check that. My calculation, though, while I mentioned Texas, the increase of hours is not because necessarily of Texas. I just reference them as a point of understanding. I can check to see if that includes lunch, and we don't. But I still believe by adding 8 additional school days for those on a 4-day week, that's what the 1140 hours would do. Be 8 additional school days at 7.35 hours a day is better for the kids. That's the purpose behind it.
Senator Yett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, is there any data that compares the student outcomes of these different groups that you've talked about? Have they been in this long enough to be able to compare?
Thank you for that question. So I have seen, I believe, no less than 5 different studies. And in every single one, it's been inconclusive whether the number going 4 days versus 5 days is if it makes a difference. However, we do know that more time in front of a high quality improves student outcomes. And so therefore, just by adding more hours to this has got to help those students since they're only on 4-day school weeks.
Follow up.
Just to make sure I'm clear, yeah, you would think so. That would stand to reason if you're in front of a teacher more, but the data doesn't support that at this point, is that what I heard you say?
The data doesn't, there's no conclusive data that I have read that says a 4-day versus 5-day student outcomes is much different. My bill is intended to give some flexibility to those schools that would like to stay on a 4-day week by adding some additional hours. So the state seeing that those kids are getting more time in front of a high quality teacher, but it's about giving them flexibility.
Will there be additional questions on this bill? Senator Pugh for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, because I'm probably easily confused, how many schools that are not currently hitting this hours mark of 1140 would this affect?
I don't know.
Well, Senator, there are approximately 97 school districts that are on a 4-day school week that would be impacted by this.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
Thank you. But we're not talking about days, right? We're talking about time. So the operative word there is the 1140 hours, if I'm understanding correctly. So you could have school districts that are 5 days that don't hit 1140 right now. So my question is, do you know what that number is? How many actual school districts are not at 1140 hours right now?
There's not a single school district, I believe, that hits 1140 hours. I will say, however, and you just reminded me of an amendment I intend to make on the floor. I hadn't done it yet because I just have not had time. But this is due to the fact that I had lunch with the Jinx and Bixby PLAC groups last week. And both those districts are 5-day-a-week districts. However, they both turn in hours. And the reason they do that is because of flexibility due to weather or due to just scheduling. And so after speaking with them, I told them, well, my intention then is to have some type of carve out for those schools that are over X number of days in a classroom, that they would not be subject to the 1140 hour because they're still hitting the days requirement, and they can stay at the 1080. The purpose of this bill is really for those that are just 4 days a week.
Do you have follow up?
And so, do you know what the fiscal impact is of the schools that would have to increase time, whatever, however that would happen, days, hours, minutes, nanoseconds. How do we plan to get those additional dollars to schools that are going to essentially have to be in the classroom and have an open school district for the additional time to hit this threshold?
Thank you for that question. The reason ours was passed in 2010 was that particular year we had some tornadoes, we had severe weather, we had things beyond a local school district's control, many of them, that were, those schools had used up all of their weather days or snow days, and they were going to have to extend school quite a bit, by another week or so, week and a half. And so the legislature passed the 1,080 hours to give those schools flexibility. What we have seen, however, is a number of schools go into the 4-day for two reasons. One, the statement is made that saves money, or two, more recruiting of teachers and making it easier for the teachers. So my contention is, with the raise being passed of last year of a 16.1% pay raise, over $6,100 average salary increase, that should provide some relief, maybe not the full solution, but some relief on the recruiting and retention of teachers. But the other argument on savings, if that is true, that there's a savings for those districts on 4 days.
Senator Dossett for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Throughout this process, Senator, have you been able to get any feedback from the 4 schools affected by this policy change?
The 4 schools.
Feedback from those schools with 4-day school weeks? Sorry?
For clarification, Mr. Chairman, like I said, the ones who are on the 135-day, the ones that would be affected by this policy change right here, have we had any feedback, or do you know anything about these schools? Where are they, and are they disputing this, or are they willing to make the change?
From the feedback I've received from those is mixed. Some do not want to go the additional hours, and I can understand why. And then some actually don't mind the change whatsoever, because they understand that more time in front of a student. So ever since day one, for myself personally, in this August body, anytime I deal with education bills, my number one focus is what's in the best interest of the student. And I believe, without any doubt, that having 8 additional days in front of a high-quality teacher is best for those students that are on a 4-day school week. But let's get them in front of a teacher more.
Additional questions on the bill? Additional questions? Senator Hall for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I have several 4-day schools in my district, and I've been in constant contact with them here lately. And all of them have, the majority of them in this school year, but if you take in last school year, all of them have won some sort of statewide academic award. So my question to you is that if we are that successful in some of these 4-day schools that are in my district, would you be willing to entertain some sort of opt-out provision to what you're suggesting here today?
No.
If they follow up, if they meet certain standards.
I would be willing to consider that if we had an academic standard, that maybe some additional flexibility there. I hadn't thought about it within this bill, but I would certainly entertain the conversation with him if we can make that work. And I get the data that shows that those schools are performing well, to work with State Department of Ed and come up with some type of accommodation, because they can show the performance at a reduced school week.
Additional questions? Additional questions on the bill? Will there be debate on the bill? Senator Hall for debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we have several bills out there that are addressing this 4-day, 5-day discussion. I know that many of us have schools in our district that are successfully implementing a 4-day school week, and the local citizens, the local community, the local school boards like what they have. And there's been a lot of discussion about what we could do to create a model that would give them an opt-out based on performance, based on being able to prove out a cost savings, to the district. I think all these bills are a work in progress. I know that this is a different angle, different approach to another bill that is out there. I'm going to vote in favor of your measure today, and I hope that you, as you always are, will remain open to discussion and give consideration to those that are successfully doing 4-day school weeks.
Senator, you have for debate.
Senator, having worked with you in this body for the last 4 years, you have proven to me that you do care about the kids, and they are your number one priority when it comes to this. I hope going forward, not just with this piece of legislation, but others, as you mentioned, we can focus on student outcomes, what's best for the kids. Sometimes some of the other issues that get brought up really should be secondary to those issues, to what's best for the kids. So I'll be voting for this issue today.
Additional debate. Additional debate. Senator Dossett for debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the senator from Perry, this measure is tricky, but I do believe this measure to be the reasonable measure of the ones that have been presented. So I will help vote this, get this out of committee, because I believe this is definitely the reasonable version when approaching this issue of the 4 or 5 day school week.
Additional debate. Will there be additional debate? Senator Stanislawski, would you like to close debate? He waives. Please call the roll.
Brooks, Daniels, Dossett, Duggar, Floyd, Hall, Eichley Freeman, Yeck, Kidd, Matthews, Montgomery, Pemberton, Pugh, Rosino, Scott, Shaw, Simpson, Stanislawski, Rader, Thompson.
Aye.
18 ayes, 2 nays.
Having received 18 ayes and 2 nays, declare Senate Bill 579 to have passed.
I'm here to offer the good news that the Department of Commerce pipeline is full of companies wanting to bring their business to the state of Oklahoma, and that's a great problem to have, because we can continue to create new taxpayers, which will keep us from having to maybe have those supplementals in the future.